Hello everyone and welcome. This video is going to be about the effect that I use in my DaVinci Resolve tutorial. If you do not know what I'm talking about, it is a 90-minute video for the very beginners, which is explaining what the heck is going on here. If you have not seen that, the link will be in the description. But in this video, I'm going to explain how I did the effect in that video. It is basically a very basic 3D work, and the effect itself is just a 3D camera flying above the footage, about the plane of the footage that is playing. You see it right now on your screen. It is easier to understand what I mean if you see that rather than me explaining that. So this effect is quite basic, but I'm using their thing within Fusion that is going to simulate the depth of field, like in real 3D program. Not something I designed in color page using masks and Gaussian blur, but something that was calculated within DaVinci Resolve itself. Of course, if you're trying to do something sophisticated, something ambitious, the real 3D work, it is best to use something like Blender or Maya or 3ds Max or something like that. Definitely not DaVinci. I would not recommend using DaVinci or Fusion for serious 3D work, but for something basic like this, DaVinci would suffice. So we've got footage in here already recorded. It is just the UI of DaVinci, the edit page, nothing interesting. We're going to go to Fusion page, and this is a bug of new DaVinci 21. Right when you go to Fusion, it activates splines. I think it is a bug, because if it is a feature, it is not a good one. We're going to deactivate it here, and we are greeted as always with media in here and media out in here. We're going to drag media in this viewer, and right now we have two viewers that do basically nothing. They are absolutely the same. So what we need to do is we need a couple of nodes that are going to take our footage and place it into a 3D world, because right now everything on this page is in 2D, and we need to explain to DaVinci that, well, we need that to be in 3D, and we need a camera that we want to operate. For that, we have these little things. First of all, I'm going to drag an image plane 3D. Once it's selected, I'm going to click on several things. First of all, Merge 3D, Camera 3D, and Renderer 3D. Those are the nodes that we need for this effect. First of all, the image plane 3D is going to take our footage and overlay on the image plane. So the image plane is our footage. Then we've got Merge 3D. It is the best way to connect the camera, because Merge allows you to control more parameters than just image plane connected with the camera. And I'm not sure whether the image plane is going to connect to camera 3D directly without the merge, but we're gonna need the merge here nonetheless, because we need to connect a second image plane to that. I'm going to get to that a little bit later. And Renderer 3D. What Renderer 3D does, it is taking our footage from 3D world and turning it into a 2D thing. You're going to see what I'm talking about. So we're going to connect our footage to image plane 3D, and we're going to connect our Renderer 3D to our output, and we are ended up with a checkerboard. Checkerboard means that nothing gets rendered, nothing gets fed to the edit page, which is not what we want. And it happens because our camera is right up close to the image plane. It does not have any separation between the image plane and the camera. We need to move that camera. In order to do that, we're going to throw merge into our viewer, left one, and here what we've got our image plane and we've got our camera. We're going to use this blue arrow to move the camera from the footage, and now finally we have something in the right viewer, meaning something gets rendered and fed to the edit page. But once we get to animation, because our camera is going to float above this footage, sometimes we get out of bounds rendering. What do I mean? If I move my camera downwards, you're going to see that there is this checkerboard that is going to be simply black. And when my camera is going to this 3D camera, it's going to float above the footage. It's going to pick those edges, and it's going to be simply black, and it's going to ruin this effect that this is a real 3D and something does not get to render here. I do not really like that. What I would like to do is take my footage, Control or Command C, click anywhere here, Control Command V, and that's basically a duplicate. We're going to connect this footage to another image plane, and we're going to connect that second image plane to Merge 3D. So right now we have two identical footages lying on top of each other. My idea is to turn around the second footage, to drag it downwards, and to get like a mirror effect, because it is going to look much better than simply flying to the very edge of the render and seeing blackness. So in order to do that, we're going to select Image Plane 3D, we're going to go to Transform, and we're going to go to Rotation tab. We're going to find Z or Z-axis, depending on whether you're a Canadian or from US, doesn't matter. And we're going to type 180 degrees. And right now we have two footages. One is looking up from down to up, the other from up to down, doesn't matter. We're going to move this footage downwards using the y-axis, and we're going to move it downwards until they no longer intersect. And I want them to come very close to each other without intersecting. So I'm going to hold Control or Command. This allows me to do fine adjustments here. So I'm going to drag it very, very closely to the other footage, something like that, without them intersecting and introducing some artifacts. This is looking much better. So I'm going to select camera, because right now we need to position our camera the way we want it to. First of all, I want it to be rotated 90 degrees, or to be precise, minus 90 degrees. Why? Because I want my camera to move from left to right, not from down to up. So I'm going to select my camera 3D and go to Transform, and this is again Z-axis, and I'm going to type minus 90 degrees and hit enter. Now our camera is looking the right way, from left to right, let's say. And I'm going to use translation parameters X, Y, and Z in order to position my camera the way I want it to be. Z parameter is going to allow me to position my camera closer to the footage. And I'm also going to need to tilt my camera, because it's going to fly and create this effect. And again, some depth of field is going to be introduced, so the camera needs to be tilted. This is an X-axis. We're going to type something like 55 degrees. Everything disappeared. Nothing to worry about, because you can see in the left viewer where the camera is looking, there is no footage there. So we're going to use again the translation parameters in order to position our camera where we want it to be. I want it to be a little bit closer to the footage, and I'm going to position it right at the very beginning of this whole situation here. Something like that. Next, before we enable, we need to do everything else before we enable depth of field, because once you enable depth of field, nothing is going to be done here, because your computer is going to freeze. And I do not care what kind of graphics card you have, whether it's 5090 or maybe double 5090, doesn't matter, it's going to freeze on you, and it's not going to give you a real-time playback no matter what you do. So before we do that, we're going to need to do animation here. I'm going to position this playhead to the very first frame, and I'm going to hit diamond in here on X-axis translation, because it's going to control our float parameter. You're going to see that. It's kind of difficult to explain all of that stuff. Next, we're going to position this playhead right to the very end, and to change parameter to achieve the very end of this footage without introducing this blackness at the end, without destroying this effect that this is like real 3D, real space, without introducing that blackness here. So we get here linear animation from left to right, the thing that we wanted. Now we're going to go to render a 3D in order to enable that depth of field effect. And we're going to change some parameter, because right now it is inaccessible for us until we change renderer type from software renderer to hardware renderer. And now we get this accumulation effect. Open it and enable, and everything is going to be thrown into blur right away. This is because amounts of depth of field blur here is too much for the scene that we've constructed. The distance between our image plane and the camera and the focal length are right now in such a state that this default value of amount of depth of field is too much. It is 0.2. We're going to reduce that to 0.02. So we're going to reduce it a lot. Something like that. And it is still out of focus. The reason for that is that right now our camera is focusing behind that plane. It does not know that we wanted to focus on that plane. So we're going to go to camera 3D. We're going to go to control parameter, and focus plane right now is set to 4. I'm going to set it to 0.4 and see what's going to happen. And from that, we're going to try to deduce where our focus plane is supposed to be. We're waiting for the result. Everything is still blurry. So I'm going to try something like 0.5, and we're getting closer to what we need. So 0.55. I think it's supposed to be something like that. Yeah, we are getting much closer to what we really want. 0.6 here. Unfortunately, I cannot simply drag it to change parameter because it's not going to update that quickly, because it is a really heavy effect. So yeah, I'm satisfied with that, with 0.6. But right now, I do not want to move anything here because it's going to lag really hard, because it is a heavy effect. We're going to go to the edit page, we're going to right click and hit render in place and hit render and wait for a substantial amount of time depending on your system, but it's going to render in place and it's going to come back to this edit page as a rendered piece. And it's going to look nice because we've enabled this thing and it's calculating on the fly. It's calculating everything that we need, this depth of field inside Fusion. It is the best type of depth of field, the most realistic one that you're going to get, but it's taking a lot of resources from your computer. So this is it. This is the effect. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.